Hi everyone, welcome to this session on DORA Metrics for testers. So before we start, I would like to know, am I audible and can you see the screen well? Okay, that's great. So would love to know where are you all joining from? I'm joining from Chandigarh. You can type in the chat where you all are joining from. Okay, we have people from Pune. We have people from US, Mumbai, Agra, Pune. That's amazing. That's great to see so many people joining in so late from so many different places. Okay, then. So before we call up James on stage and he takes up the whole session, I would just like to tell you a little bit about the test tribe and would like to just talk a little bit about it. So, firstly, once again, welcome to this webinar on DORA Metrics for Testers by with James Espie. A huge shout out to Browser Stack, our exclusive sponsor for all community events and premier sponsor for conferences. We thank them for their support, uh, because of which we are able to do all these community events. A little bit about us. So, Test Tribe is leading software testing community. We started in 2018 with a mission to co-create smarter, prouder, and confident testers. We do a lot of events. We have our online community space, and we also have our e-learning platform for the testers to collaborate, learn, and grow. We have done around 200 plus software testing events that ranges from conferences, hackathons, webinars like these, then meetups, and many more. So we have around 70,000 plus global testers involved in the community with us. We are present in 9 plus cities physically and over 100 countries virtually. If you want to participate in the community, you can participate in these community initiatives like writing. You can speak with us. For example, James is the speaker today. If you want to be a speaker, you can contact us. You can volunteer with us. You can be student ambassador. You can help us with the interview questions. So there are a lot of things where you can volunteer. So you can reach out to us for this. Some more events in store for you. So this week on 18th Feb, we are doing physical meetups in numerous cities. These meetups helps you to meet and network people in your city. So we have a meetup in Bangalore coming up. We have a meetup in Mumbai. We have a meetup in Pune, Chandigarh, Hyderabad, and NCR on 18th of February. So, if you are free and if you want to upskill yourself while networking with the testers in your city, please do join in these meetups. There will be a poll that you can sign up, that you can just click, and we'll share more details with you. Another amazing and great event coming up, a conference coming up, is on 24th, 25th, and 26th, Workference, our workshop only testing conference. In this conference, you will get 19 or 17 workshops, 17 plus workshops you'll in 3 days with 10 plus themes. So you can just sign up for these workshops, and 1300 plus testers have already registered. So if you want, just 9 days left, just sign up for it now. We also have our offline conference coming to Bangalore on 14th and 15th July. So if you are interested in networking and meeting and learning, you can join in the waitlist now, and we will be sharing more details with you soon. Another thing, as you know, we have a lot of courses also on our platform. So one of the course is Become a Pro in Test Designing by Robert Sabrin. You can join in for this course, and these are some things that you learn in it. So if you are interested, we have dropped a link in the chat, and you can definitely join in now. And at last, we have a community which we talked about. You can join in this community through this link bit.ly Discord. And definitely, you can ask the questions there. You can get your questions answered. We have sometimes game nights that you can do, like participate, and then there are quizzes that happens there. So definitely join in the fun and learning there. Now coming to a speaker, who is James today. So a little bit about James. James is an engineering manager at Fergus. He is passionate about building quality software in high performing engineering terms. He's also author of testing newsletter PyMail. With that, I would like to call him up on the stage where he can start his webinar on DORA Metrics for testers. Welcome to the stage, James.
Just waiting for my microphone. There we go.
Yes.
All right. Hello. Thank you for the invitation. And I do want to echo Vanshika, that the in-person meetups are a great thing to do. I am a shy person. I find in-person meetups really hard, but one of the best things I've done for my career is getting along to some of the in-person meetups here. So if anyone out there is on the fence, difficult thing to do sometimes to get along to an in-person meetup and meet people, but really recommend it. So I'd encourage you to get involved. All right, am I okay to share my screen and start?
Yeah, you can share your screen and you can start.
All right, let me make sure I share the right screen. Come on, internet. All right, here we go. Cool. Okay, hello everyone. We are here tonight to talk about DORA metrics for testers. Some of you, this might be stuff you already know. Some of you, it'll be very new. So I'm going to take sort of an entry-level approach to what DORA metrics are, why they're important, especially for testers, all that sort of stuff. But before we get too deep, you've already had an introduction to me, so I'm not going to cover that in too much detail again. There are a couple of things that I do want to talk about, though. So as sort of said, I'm an engineering manager at Fergus here in New Zealand. We build a app for tradespeople, so for plumbers and electricians. And I've been in the industry for about 20 years. Most of that has been testing. At the moment, I'm an engineering manager as my title, and I'm still very tied to our quality engineering team and working out how we test our products better. My background is largely product companies, particularly SaaS companies, and that's important as we progress through this presentation today. It's important that you know that that's the context I'm coming from, because we're going to talk about metrics, and metrics will be different for different organizations, different contexts, and some of the things, if you're in a consulting space or you are test software that has a hardware component or some sort of on-prem installation, some of the numbers you hear might not make sense to you. We'll talk about deploying to production every day, which makes sense in a SaaS context. But if you have to drive somewhere and install software on site, that doesn't really apply. So the concepts, the metrics are still relevant to you, but the numbers you might need to adjust for where you're working and what it is you're doing. And look, I love talking about testing. I love talking about software quality. I really want to see the software industry become a place that values quality more. I think, a lot of people are used to buggy and bad software on the internet. And one of the things I'm passionate about is seeing software that's built well, and DORA metrics are a part of that picture. So what are we talking about? So DORA is the DevOps Research and Assessment Group. That's what it means. This was a group.
Hi, James. Sorry to
Hi.
interrupt you.
Hmm.
Actually, the screen is looking very small. Can you try to make it bigger? Like the
Uh,
slide is small.
I can. Is that better?
Um, no, we can't read the text that is there.
Hmm. Let me. Maybe it's this one.
Yeah,
How's
now it's
that?
better. Yeah,
Okay. All
now
right. Cool.
thank.
All right. Apologies for that. It means I won't be able to see anyone, but I'm gonna just assume you're all there and make some noise if there's if there's anything I'm doing wrong. Sorry about that. I was sharing the wrong. Sorry, I had the wrong tab open. Okay, so this DevOps Research and Assessment Group. This is where the DORA Metrics come from. It was founded by Jean Kim, Jez Humble, and Dr. Nicole Forsgren, who you might know from the book Accelerate, which ties heavily into this sort of DORA type work. This group was later acquired by Google, so it's part of Google now, and each year Google produce a state of DevOps report that talks about these metrics and how they might have changed. And so the DORA metrics have come out of this group. They're a set of benchmarks that they've identified as strongly correlating with a successful organization. So successful in your business, successful in your engineering operations, all that sort of thing. And so today we're going to talk through what those metrics are and what they mean. So, real high level, what are they? The 4 DORA metrics. Number 1, deployment frequency, how often you deploy to production. Number 2 is lead time for changes, how long does it take you to get code into production. Number 3 is mean time to restore, so how long does it take you to restore from an outage if you've had one. And number 4 is change failure rate. So what percentage of those changes that you put into production cause some sort of degradation to your service? So those are the 4 metrics. There is also the latest version of the State of DevOps report also includes a 5th metric, reliability, which we're not going to cover today. There's a couple of reasons for that. It's fairly new in the report, and I didn't want to do it, injustice by trying to make it up before I'd done any sort of looking into it. But it's also, these other 4 things feed into reliability. The first 4 are sort of operational things that you can work on. Reliability is much more about service uptime and that sort of thing. So it makes sense to look at these first 4 for a starter. So let's get okay. I don't want to just tell you what the metrics are, because you could Google that for yourselves, right? That's not good use of this time together. We are going to look at what they are, but what I'd really like you to also come away with is to understand why they're important for testers. Why these DORA metrics are going to make a more quality product, and then how you can advocate to improve them. What are the things you can do that will improve these metrics in your organization? So we'll start with number 1, deployment frequency. So deployment frequency is how often your team deploys to production. I am lucky in that at the moment I work for an organization that deploys to production multiple times a day. So we can deploy on demand whenever we like. But I've worked for organizations before who only have one deploy to production every 3 months. And so, we'd work and work over a 3-month period and build this great big release and then whoosh it off to production. According to the DevOps report, the ideal frequency is to have that multiple deploys a day frequency, and that the more time on average between deploys, the worse it's going to be. And you know that if you start to get a deployment frequency that's more than monthly, so it takes you more than a month to get a deploy out to production, that's bad. Why is it important? So there's a couple of reasons. Actually, there's lots of reasons, but we'll talk about a couple of reasons. One is that frequent deployments mean fast feedback. You know, if you think about that first company I was working for, we could be writing code in January and it wouldn't see production until April, which is 3 months before you know whether the code you've built is actually useful, whether it's buggy, whether people are using it. So that you get a slow feedback loop from that slow deployment frequency. If you can deploy on demand, you reduce that time for feedback. So you can build something, deploy it in the morning. By the afternoon, you've at least got an idea of whether it works or not. You know, you'll see if you've got any logging or monitoring in place, you'll see some data coming back from it. You'll see if people are using it really quickly. So frequent deployments is good for that fast feedback loop, which again is important for quality, right? Because as quality people, we want to know that people are using our stuff and that it works. And then frequent deployments, in most cases, mean smaller deployments. If we look at that example again of the 3 monthly deploy cycle, if we're building over a 3-month period, that deployment becomes massive, right? There's a lot of code changes in that. And so when it goes to production and something breaks, it's really hard to identify which of these changes is responsible. So by bringing that frequency down, you bring the size of the deployment down. And, if you can deploy on demand, each deployment may only contain 1 or 2 changes. So when something breaks, immediately you know what the problem is and you can remedy it, which again, as quality people, is what we want, right? To identify problems and be able to mitigate them quickly. So how do you do it? So one thing that's going to be important is a good CI/CD pipeline. Deploying stuff to production is hard, and the more you can automate it, the better that's going to be. And so as quality people, we should be advocating to get that CI/CD pipeline in place and have it nice and robust and fast so that our engineers can hit a button and with the click of the button, start that deployment to production process. The more investment we can do in that, the better. And the other thing, the deployment process is one thing. Regression testing can be another blocker to deployment frequency. I have seen I've seen teams, it's probably a better way to phrase it, who build a great CI/CD pipeline, but then say, well, we still need 3 days of regression testing before every release, and just blow out that deployment frequency again because of regression testing. One thing it's important to get comfortable with if you want to improve your deployment frequency is doing less regression testing and doing more targeted regression testing, or even potentially doing no regression testing, which can be, testers, we love regression testing. So that can be hard to let go of, but that's important to do to make that deployment frequency go. Okay, the next one is lead time for changes. How long does it take to get code into production? So what this means is, as an engineer is working away at something, they'll commit some code. What's the time between that first commit and actually being live in production? The recommendation from the DORA report is that you want that to be in between 1 day and 1 week. So from the first, if you commit on Monday, that should be in production by Friday. And more than a month is bad. So if it's taking more than a month for you to get one piece of work out to production, that's a sign that something needs to change. Now, this is an interesting one because it's really something for engineers, and so it's a little bit hard for testers to see how they can influence this, but it's not impossible. It's important, again, because of the lead time, right? If something's taken a month for it to get to production, that's a month before you get feedback on user usage. So very similar to the deployment frequency, we want lead time to be small so that we get feedback from users on the bugs they're finding, how they're using the product, is it successful? But there's a couple of reasons, at least in my experience, that I've seen this lead time balloon out. The first is engineers taking on changes that are too big, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So, if it's too big, it's going to take longer. The other one is engineers getting distracted. And, distraction is something that causes a real problem with this, right? Because what happens is, an engineer will start coding something, and then they will be called onto a support ticket or be called onto an incident or be told, oh, we're going to pivot and you're going to work on something else. And so that first change that they started working on sits there and gets stale. And as it sits there untouched, other people might make changes to the same piece of code. That leads to merge conflicts. That leads to unforeseen bugs, or just engineers forgetting the context of what they were working on because it's been so long. So, those distractions are another part of that picture, trying to minimize the amount of distraction that engineers have. So, again, a CI/CD pipeline is going to be really good for improving your lead time. Make that lead time fast by automating the deployment so that engineers aren't all waiting on stuff to happen. The other thing is, of course, to not let testing be part of that bottleneck. It's real frustrating for engineers when they want to deploy something, but I can't because I need to wait for a tester to test this. And so one thing we can do is help enable engineers in that regard. Can they test it themselves? Is there automation that can do it for them? Are automation tests tagged so they don't have to run the whole suite of tests? They can just run the ones that are relevant to them, all that sort of stuff. And of course, encourage small changes. One thing we talk about a lot in testing, I'm sure you will have heard it before, is that we should be testing early in the process. Testers should be involved in planning, in sizing, writing up our stories. We should be seeing designs early. One thing we can do at that stage is to encourage small changes as we see pieces of work being sized up. If they're too big, ask our team if there's ways we can break them down. Can we make this smaller? Because if we make this smaller, it will reduce our lead time to get into production. And if that lead time is smaller, we'll get feedback faster. We'll know more about it. We won't have code sitting there untouched. And so, we'll get a better quality product because of that. So that's number 2. That's lead time for changes. Number 3, my favorite one. It is funny to have a favorite metric, but this is the one I guess I get the most joy from, is the mean time to restore. I guess that's because I like working on incidents. I like having a good incident resolution process. Mean time to restore is how long it takes to recover from an incident. The recommendation from the DORA group is that less than a day is good. So if you have some sort of incident, some sort of outage, some sort of production event that affects your customers, you want that to be less than a day. And if that's more than a week, that's bad. It's pretty obvious, at least to me, why this is a problem. So I don't want to make it too plain. A faster time to restore means less impact on the customers or on the business. And if we want to build a quality product, part of that picture is to reduce the impact on customers or the business. Testing isn't just about finding bugs, right? Testing is about building a quality product and reducing the risk profile. So we want that fast time to restore. If you think about it, let's say you have a serious outage, your site is down, and it's down for a whole hour before customers can access it again. That's bad, right? An hour without being able to access it is bad. It has an effect. But a week without customers being able to access it is so much worse. And so, the more we can reduce that time, the less impact problems are going to have. And part of the picture is, how do we recover from problems? Cool thing about mean time to restore is there's lots of different ways to address it. I'm a big advocate for tooling that can make restoration of service easier. There's a couple of things I really like. Feature flags is one of them, and feature flags at multiple places I've worked has been a really good way of mitigating that risk. If you're not familiar with feature flags, a feature flag is it's really just an if statement in code, but a flag is a toggle to turn a feature on or off. So if you were, let's say you are building a new sign-up page for your website. So you've got an old sign-up page, you've built this fancy new one, you've deployed it to production, and you've turned the feature flag on so customers can use it. And you discover, despite all your testing, for some reason, their new sign-up page, people would sign up, but then they can't log in. If they've used the new sign-up page, something's broken. The first thing you can do is just turn the feature flag for that new sign-up page off. And by turning it off, you flip back to the old sign-up page, customers can sign up again, and you've restored service, and then you can go and fix the problem. So your mean time to restore is reduced, even though the bug is not fixed. That's how feature flags come into play. Another thing you can use is what they call blue-green deploys. And this is something you'd work with like your ops team with. Blue-green deploys are a system where you have two production environments called blue and green. And your blue one might be live, the live production environment that customers are using. Green one might be offline or not being actively used. You'll have a load balancer between the two. And as you make a new change, you can deploy that to your green server. And when it's ready, you switch the traffic over so that traffic starts going to green instead of blue. And this is a way of releasing new features. And how that de-risks you is if you start to see problems arising from sending traffic to the green server, you can quickly switch it back to go to the old one, to the blue one again. That's what blue-green deploys means. There's also cool things you can do, like send 10% of your traffic to the green server to start with, and just to see what happens, and then switch it back if it's problematic. All that sort of stuff. It's really neat and fun to play with. Excuse me, I'm just going to grab some water. But those are some of the tools you can use. Logging, alerting, and monitoring are really important in terms of mean time to restore too. Why do I say that? Because logging, alerting, and monitoring is how we find out about problems. If you don't have these things in place, you're going to learn about problems from customers. And that's bad for a bunch of reasons, right? If the first way you find out about a problem is from your customer, one, you've broken that relationship, you've destroyed some faith with the customer. But more than that, customers don't always report bugs, so it's going to wait until a customer hits it and decides to report it. Then it's going to go to your support team, and your support team probably aren't going to do anything until they get a pattern, until they get 4 or 5 reports of this. And then support team have to engage with engineering, and there's got to be a conversation there. And there's this whole period of time that happens as that sort of feedback feeds through to engineering. If you have good logging, alerting, and monitoring in place, we can find out about a problem before the customer does, and we can do something about it before they've even seen it. And that's going to be much better just in terms of an experience, but it's also going to reduce that time to restore because, we found out about the problem earlier. And of course, some of the stuff we've already talked about, deployment frequency is going to feed in to your mean time to restore. By that, I mean, if you have deployed something and it's broken and you know what to fix, you can deploy that fix real quickly. Or you need to do a rollback, you can do that rollback really quickly. So by improving something like our deployment frequency, we can improve our mean time to restore as well. Excuse me. Last but not least, the fourth metric is change failure rate. And quality engineers, testers, quality analysts, this one probably feels like home a little bit because we're talking about bugs, we're talking about degraded service. What percentage of deployments require a hotfix or a rollback or a patch or a roll forward, some sort of fix after the fact? The recommendation is 0 to 15% being good, and more than 30% is bad. I used to work for a company where we would package up all our changes every Thursday and release them to production. And then Friday was hotfix day. Every release to production had at least one hotfix, which is 100% change failure rate, right? Which is super, super bad. And I do not recommend working in that way at all. But that's how some, that happens. But the more we can get away from that and have, ideally, we want to shoot for a 0% failure rate, although that's a little bit unrealistic. We're always going to have some bugs, but having that as low as possible is good. And of course, we all know this, right? As testers, as people that are heavily focused on quality, preventing these sorts of failures is really what we want to be doing as much as possible. How do we do that? The main way is through testing. What I've written here is through targeted testing, being really specific about what we're testing so that our testing can meet the criteria of those other metrics, so that we're not running a massive regression testing suite. We're testing around the thing that we're changing all the time. I've put automating the right things, although it doesn't necessarily need to be automation, right? Sometimes you just need to do, we've made a change to our sign-up page. Let's spend some time doing some exploratory testing around sign-up, but we don't need to regression test our shopping cart. It's doing the right things at the right times, at the right levels. The other things that you can consider automation and making sure that you've got the right parts of the automation test pyramid in place. If that's a thing you subscribe to, your unit tests, your integration tests, your UI tests. Does this change require performance tests? Does it need some, should we have visual regression tests because we have a product that has a lot of visuals, or it's really important to us? All that sort of thing is what you need to consider to improve that change failure rate. So that's the 4 metrics. I hope you're still with me. So what? So now you know what they are and why they're important. Now what do you do? So the first thing is to get some numbers, right? What are the DORA metrics at your organization? Some of those numbers are easy to work out. Your deployment frequency, hopefully you got some idea of how often you're deploying to production. If not, you can measure it, right? Work out how that deployment happens, figure out how often it's happening, and start to track it. Some of them, like lead time to change, are a bit harder to work out. There's tooling to help you do that, though. I know there's things in GitHub that will tell you the time between the first commit and the time it's been merged, things like that. If you want to measure your mean time to restore, you have to wait for incidents to happen. Hopefully those are tracked in some way. If they're not, start tracking them. Track the time from the incident starting to affect customers to restoration of service. mean time to restore can be a tricky one because restoration of service doesn't always mean it's been restored. And so you want to be quite particular about that. For example, if you have, if your change corrupted some data somehow, you might have reverted the change, but you still need to fix that data corruption before you can really consider it restored. So there's those things that come into play. And then, of course, change failure rate you can measure by just counting the number of times you have to, the number of releases versus that don't require hot fixes versus the number that do, and working out a percentage from there. So get those numbers. What are they? And then identify the bottleneck. What's the one metric you want to improve? What one mistake I see happen is when people say, oh, we've got these metrics, let's make them all better. Here's all this work to do, especially if you're struggling, right? You'll see all this stuff and be overwhelmed. But my advice is to pick one, just one that you're going to improve. If the worst one is mean time to restore, pick that one first and work on improving that. Make some changes to improve it, and then measure again. And hopefully you'll see the numbers have improved, and then you can look at the metrics again and go, okay, what's next? And iterate and repeat on that. One thing I do want to make clear is that any sort of metrics, whatever it is you're measuring, are not a silver bullet. Any system can be gamed, and people like to do that with metrics. And so they do need to be taken into context. As an example, I could just start, we've got a login button on our page and it's blue. I could make a change to make it green, and then I can make another change to make it blue, and I can make another change to make it green again. My deployment frequency will go up, my lead time will go down, my change failure rate will go down, but it's not useful. It's not important. And so, these are good things to measure, but they are still just a measure. They don't measure things like customer satisfaction. Security is not a part of this picture. So do take all that stuff into context as well. If you increase your deployment frequency, but you decrease your customer satisfaction, well, that's a problem and something else that needs to be taken into account. So do take these metrics in context as well. And that brings me to not the end, but to question time. I think, Vanshika, if you're still there, and we wanted to do some time for questions. I'm just going to make that window a little bit smaller so I can see the other one again.
Yeah, sure. So we'll take some questions now. So if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat or in the question and answer tab. We'll wait for those questions.
All right. I'll just jump into the tab there. I'll give it a couple of minutes. It is okay if there's no questions as well. I'll take that as a sign that I've done a really good job. All right. Who have we got here?
We have a question.
Yes.
Yeah. It's from Sergus Golek. I'm sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. But he's asking where it can go wrong and where it's most useful. It's on the stage.
Cool. All right. So thank you for your question. Yeah, look, where can it go wrong? I think like any metrics, it can go wrong if you don't use it carefully, right? So take the numbers into context and use them wisely. So, like as the sort of the example I gave, you could increase deployment frequency, but not do anything useful. So, yeah, I guess, sorry, let me read the question again. Where can it go wrong? Is if you're misusing those metrics. Where it's most useful is it's useful once you've measured. It's not useful until you've measured these things and figured out whether there's a change you need to make. So the use is, I guess, getting a picture of your organizational operational success. So from what I've experienced, I've done this exercise where we've gone through, we've looked at the numbers and gone, okay, our lead time for change is the one that stands out, and here's something we can focus on and make improvements to. So the use of it is getting, a picture and getting data behind what you're doing, because it's really easy to say, oh, we deploy too slowly. It's different if you can say, oh, we deploy only once a week, and we have numbers here that say we should be doing that faster. Then you can tell a story to your investors, your exec team, that says, we need to invest in this. This is going to create a better quality product. This is going to mean we can respond to changes faster. This means when we have an outage, it's not going to last as long. This is why we should spend money on that and not building, a shiny new shopping cart, for example. So that's where these things come in useful, at least in my experience. I hope that answers your question.
Got it. So we have another question from Kaushik. He's asking, are there any standard plugins for CI/CD pipeline to measure DORA metrics?
The honest answer is I don't know. When we've had to measure it, we haven't used any standard sort of plugins. I am sure there are tools out there. But for us, we just did some, lead time for change was the hard one. And we just did some data analysis, looking at the number of commits to a repository and the number of mergers, and doing some Excel spreadsheet manipulation. So really, really low tech, but I'm sure there are tools out there for that as well. Sorry, I don't know the names of any of them off the top of my head. Some of those metrics you probably don't need tooling for. Your deployment frequency, if that's being reported somewhere, should be pretty obvious. Maybe it's not. Maybe in a really big organization that's harder to measure, and you might need some tooling. But yeah. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for you than that at the moment.
I understood. So we don't have any other questions at the moment. So
Cool.
we'll wait one more minute. And if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat or the question answer tab, and we'll take that.
Cool. Yeah, look, I'll move to the final slide, and if anyone does have any other questions, they can chuck them in there. And look, it's just to say thanks for listening. I really do hope that's useful to you. I know learning about this stuff was useful to me. So, I hope it has the same sort of impact, and I hope I've communicated it in a way that is useful to you. Cool. I do see there's one more question there from Alice.
Yeah, there's one more question. So
Yep.
Alice is asking, you can measure the 4 DORA metrics, but how do you determine whether good scores on DORA metrics are actually improving the product?
Yep. So that's when I say DORA metrics are not a silver bullet, that's exactly what I mean, right? You can't, like anything, you can't just improve the numbers and expect change. DORA metrics, improving those metrics will probably improve the product, but you need to think about, in your specific context, if I improve the deployment frequency, what will happen? One thing you can look for is over time for like the change failure rate to go down. Like if that number goes down, that's a pretty clear indication you've got improvements to the product. Maybe it's not to the usability of the product, but it's to your customer experience, things like that. But the short answer is you have to think about it. You can't just fix those or improve those metrics and life will be good. Sometimes the changes you need to make to improve the product are not the DORA metrics. There's something else, it's a usability thing, it's security, all that other sort of stuff that's not covered by these. DORA metrics are definitely sort of operational stuff more than anything. That's not an easy answer to that question. It's not a soundbite. I'm sorry. The answer really is you have to think and engage with it before you make those changes.
Understood. Got it. I hope that answers your question, Alice. We don't have any other questions left. Yeah.
Cool.
I think. Okay, one more question. No. Yeah, Alice just responded. Understood. It's not an easy question. Okay, then I think that then we can end our session now. There are no more questions.
Cool.
If you all have any other questions that you want to ask James, you can probably reach out to him on his LinkedIn account, and he will be able to answer all your questions and he will be able to guide you on these things.
Yep.
Other than that,
Absolutely.
just dropping a feedback link in the chat. It would be great if you can give us the feedback and tell us how we can improve. Yes. Yes, James, anything you want to say?
No, not really. Like I say, I do really enjoy talking about how we build better quality products. I have a newsletter. Please subscribe if you're interested. And this is the sort of content you'll be getting. If you have questions you want to send me on LinkedIn, please feel free. The only thing I'd ask is if you add me on LinkedIn, please say that you come from the Test Tribe webinar. Otherwise, I'm gonna, in my head, I'll think, oh, this is someone trying to sell me something, and I'll probably block you. So please include that if you have me on LinkedIn. And that's the picture you'll find of me all over the place. So, yep, that's all from me. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening to me talk.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, James, for joining in to this session. Like, it was a great session with like very compact knowledge, but you explained it really well. So thank you so much for doing this, and thank you to all the attendees who joined us. I mean, know it's late in India, and still you guys are joining us, and it's early for James also. I think it's really early for James. So thank you so much for doing it at such an early time.
No problem.
So we will meet in some other event and with some other topic and some other guest. So till then, have a happy learning and nice week. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.